Hello, good evening and welcome to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. It's live from our studio here at Adesawe Kanda in Accra. I am Martin Asiedu-Dartey. Coming up this evening, Drivers and Vehicle Licensing Authority, the DVLA, defends registration of Voxy vehicles as it confirms they passed all mechanical tests. We'll interrogate this issue in detail in a moment. Also coming up, Attorney General files argument at the Supreme Court seeking a declaration that power of the Office of the Special Prosecutor to prosecute without authorization is unconstitutional. Tonight, we analyze the Attorney General's proposed arguments. And later in the bulletin, President Mahama convenes emergency cabinet meeting in the wake of global economic instability, and also to check out how Ghana can withstand the tensions in the Middle East. Details of all of these and more for the next 1 hour, including business and sports. Before these stories, though, let's bring you the news summaries.
We move to the Ashanti region, and the Asantehene Otumfuo Osei II has promised to support the Ghana Journalists Association in putting up a befitting press center in the Ashanti region. Regional executives of the association paid homage to the overlord of the Asante Kingdom during the Ewukudai observation at the Menchia Palace. Officials of the Asukore Mampo municipality have announced tough new measures to deal with Pragia riders who flout road traffic regulations. The Municipal Security Council believes a growing indiscipline among riders is posing serious security and safety concerns, hence a decision to strictly enforce the law. Fire has partially destroyed a two-story building at Ashalibutwe in the Adenta municipality of the Greater Accra region, which is reportedly owned by Prophet Daniel Obinim, widely known as Angel Obinim. The blaze is said to have started in the upper section of the building before spreading to other areas, leaving parts of the structure badly damaged. Finally, the Ghana Immigration Service has indicated that it is set to add riding proficiencies to its tactical training curriculum, ensuring that every graduate acquires riding skills. This was revealed when the service received a fleet of motorbikes donated by the German Federal Police to support its border operations and help curb cross-border crime. And that'll be all for the news summaries. For more updates, please check out our website, 3news.com. I am Christabel Success Trevor. Martin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Christabel, for the news summaries. Let's settle for the details of our stories now. We're starting from the Office of the Attorney General, and the AG has filed arguments at the Supreme Court seeking a declaration that Section 4.2 of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, is unconstitutional and should be struck down. Section 4.2 mandates that the Attorney General must authorize the Office of the Special Prosecutor to initiate and conduct prosecutions of corruption-related offenses. According to the proposed statement of case filed on Wednesday, the 8th of April 2026, the OSP has, since 2018, been investigating and prosecuting such offenses without the Attorney General's authorization. In the argument, the Attorney General will rely on Article 88 of the 1992 Constitution, which vests prosecutorial powers in the Attorney General. The submission argues that any prosecution by the state requires the Attorney General's authorization, a power Parliament cannot remove through ordinary legislation. Deputy Attorney General Dr. Justice Remsai, who filed the processes, contends that the Attorney General may authorize only natural persons to prosecute, not judicial entities such as the OSP. The OSP's motion seeks the Supreme Court to declare as follows: that Parliament, by ordinary legislation, has varied the constitutional prosecutorial powers of the Attorney General, and that Parliament has acted beyond its powers in doing so. Summary of the Attorney General's arguments include the fact that they are seeking prosecutorial powers of the Republic should be vested solely in the Attorney General, or a reiteration of that particular position, and also that the OSP Act does not compel the Attorney General to authorize the OSP to prosecute offenses. They are also praying that Parliament cannot compel the Attorney General to authorize any person to prosecute an offense. The OSP's Act varies the Attorney General's constitutionally protected prosecutorial powers, and that ordinary legislation cannot alter the prosecutorial powers vested in the Attorney General. Prosecutorial powers may not be delegated to a judicial or a juridical person. John Quayson will join us shortly to help us get a further legal understanding, or at least for the layman, what does this mean? And so the key issue really is that the Attorney General has gone to the Supreme Court and is seeking a declaration that Section 4.2 of the OSP's Act 2017 is unconstitutional and should be struck down. They are also asking that same Section 4.2 mandates the Attorney General must authorize the Office of the Special Prosecutor to initiate and conduct prosecutions of corruption-related offenses. According to the proposed statement of case filed on Wednesday, since 2018, the OSP has investigated and prosecuted such offenses without the AG's authorization. Let's go to the phone lines now. John Quayson is a constitutional lawyer and has joined us for more education on this. Mr. Quayson, good evening. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Good evening, my brother.
Yeah, so the Attorney General is in court and is relying on Article 88 of the Constitution. What does this article actually say about the prosecutorial authority of the Attorney General vis-a-vis the OSP?
Okay, so thank you very much. For the benefit of your cherished listeners, most of whom might not have access to a copy of the Constitution readily. I don't know if you have it in front of you and you may want to read it. Whatever it is, I have it here.
At the moment, I do not.
Come again?
At the moment, I do not have it in front of me.
But so should I go ahead and read?
Yes, please. You can go ahead and read it.
Okay, so what I have here stipulates that, it says, I think 88.3. It says the Attorney General shall be responsible for the initiation and conduct of all prosecution of criminal offenses. Okay, so shall be responsible for the initiation and prosecution of all criminal offenses. That is 88.3. And then 4 says, 88.4 says, all offenses prosecuted in the name of the Republic of Ghana shall be at the seat of the Attorney General. But this is where the issue lies, and it's very, very important and critical. The second part of 4, I've read the first part. The second part is, or any person authorized by him in accordance with any law. You see, this is where maybe the AG department have misinterpreted and turned the law upside down. And I will plead with them to take a second look at the provision very well. Now, you see, a whole government, a whole parliament will not just go and then parade, congregate, and pass a law or an act without necessarily taking a first look at the Constitution before them. You know, Parliament is full of lawyers. And the interesting aspect too is that the current AG, Dr. Aini himself was even part of the people who passed this particular act. I have said, I think on your platform and some other platform before, that but for the one-on-one personal issues involving the AG's department or its functionary, and then the OSP and its functionaries, all these things are matters that could have been resolved internally. You see, there are some serious internal wranglings, and then I feel it is not good for our governors. It's Ghana that must be put forward. Personal matters and issues should come secondly. Otherwise, I don't really see the head and tail of the role the AG wants to play in this particular matter.
Right, but
the irony is that
sorry for coming in. If we take it
the
back,
case is, okay, you go on.
Yes,
go ahead.
Let's take it back to 2016, 2017. Well, particularly 2017, when the OSP's Act was being debated in Parliament. Didn't this come up, and didn't it cross the minds of the many lawyers, like you're referring to, in Parliament, that the sole power to prosecute is vested in the Attorney General, and that the OSP's Act, which was now being debated in Parliament to be passed, should not, or should at least be subservient to the authority of the Attorney General, in that if the OSP actually has to prosecute, it must refer that part of its authority to the Attorney General?
No, the
Could it have slipped the
Constitution is
minds
very
of
clear. There is 88.3
Right.
and there's 88.4. The 88.4 is in two parts.
Okay.
You see, the first part of 88.4 says the AG is authorized for criminal prosecutions. The second part says or any person authorized in accordance to any law in Ghana. Any law there could be an act of Parliament. Our laws are not summed up in only the Constitution. We have sources of law in Ghana. Acts of Parliament are also part of our laws. The problem or the challenge the AG is having now is that maybe the unwillingness on the part of the AG department to sort of endorse the provision in the OSP's Act that says that the AG should authorize the OSP. But that is law. That's the position of the law. The law says the AG must authorize the OSP to do ABC. And the ABC includes prosecution on corruption-related matters. The function of the OSP are set out in clear terms. There is a reason why the government or Parliament sought to enact a completely different act, you see, to augment or complement the already existing role of the Attorney General.
Right.
And that is why they have stipulated in it that when it comes to corruption-related matters, the AG should authorize. You see, Parliament were very smart. They didn't want to flout the Constitution. So they came rightfully under 88, Article 88.4, the second part of it. The first part says the AG should do it. The second part says or maybe I don't understand the meaning of or. Did you get it?
I
It
get
is there in plain words.
Yes. Is it, and by even the or, it mentions some of the institutions that could be given such powers, like the Ghana Police Service and other public officials. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't really, and that's why when we are addressing the issue, we should look at the background of the issue. The background is a direct confrontation between the AG's department and then the OSP's department. And to which the head of AG and the head of OSP are the main people at the center of this unwarranted battle. And I don't know why that is happening. Maybe the president or parliament should step in so that in the interest of government, both of them can come together.
Right. So
the irony, the other funny aspect too is that when an individual brings a case against the government must defend. But in this particular case, the Attorney General is rather supporting the individual who is having a case against the OSP. I mean, come to think of it, a government fighting with another government department in favor of an ordinary person.
So
where does this happen? It doesn't happen anywhere.
So if I'm understanding
government
what you're
at all
saying,
times should be one. Government at all times should be one.
Certainly. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, it means that
what should have happened was that the Attorney General should have rather gone for interpretation and not to allow an individual to sue. Attorney General in this case is a defendant. So how can a defendant be fighting your own colleague defendant? and all of you are an establishment of government.
Under the same state.
It doesn't work out that way. But if it is the 88 they want to rely on, then the AG's department wrongfully interpreted the Constitution. But that's not what the Constitution is saying. The word is in plain language. It says the AG or any person, any other person.
But is it also your understanding that the or any other person, and in the any other person category, we could also have the OSP also as an entity, because based on the argument,
that is what the law is trying to say.
It's trying to say.
And in the defense that I've seen the processes.
Yeah.
The defense the AG sought to put out is neither here nor there. It says in the history of Ghana there hasn't been any OSP before, and all the prosecutorial powers were in the AG. I mean, the OSP was just established recently.
Yes.
So you can't even bring that in as an argument.
So what is the legal understanding of, or the legal interpretation of what Justice Remsa is saying in the argument that they are pushing at the Supreme Court? He says that the Attorney General may authorize only natural persons to prosecute, not juridical entities such as the OSP. So, for
any lawyer would
how do you interpret that?
Any lawyer would tell you that if they say person, we have natural person. You do get it. Mm-hmm. And then institutions are also persons. The Constitution never said natural persons.
Okay.
You get it. That's why I took time
to read
and pain to read
specific words of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And like I'm saying, the background of this whole suit is very, very important for us to understand the whole thing.
Okay.
It's the internal wrangling. If you take out the internal wrangling, there's really no problem at all.
Right.
Parliament is full of renowned lawyers and so on and so forth. And when this thing came up, if there was really a problem with it, a renowned lawyer in the spec of Honorable Martin Asiedu, himself the first OSP, would have taken the matter up as unconstitutional.
Right.
And he wouldn't even accept the position to be there.
Okay.
So there's actually nothing wrong in the light of the constitutional provision as espoused in Article 88(4), the second part.
Right. Okay. Mr. Kwesi, thank you so much for the clarity you have brought to this, or the other perspectives you have shared on this argument. We'll see how the Supreme Court interpretation will be in the coming days. Thank you for your time, as always.
Thank you too, my brother.
And you heard John Kwesi, a constitutional lawyer and private legal practitioner as well. And for those of you who are listening, you can also let us know what you make of what exactly the Attorney General is seeking, the kind of interpretation they are seeking at the Supreme Court. Do let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Just look for 3FM 92.7 on Facebook and on YouTube and be a part of the general national conversation. We're going to the office of the President now, and Cabinet is expected to meet, is currently expected to be in a meeting to consider measures aimed at cushioning Ghanaians from the impact of rising fuel prices, largely driven by the ongoing tensions in the Middle East. The recent escalation involving the United States, Israel, and Iran has pushed up global crude oil prices, triggering fuel price hikes locally. The increase is already having a cascading effect, with the cost of transport, goods, and essential services expected to go up. Government is therefore seeking immediate interventions to ease the burden on both households and businesses as fuel costs continue to climb. The meeting is expected, among other things, to outline practical steps to subsidize or stabilize fuel prices and mitigate its impact on the broader economy. This comes after assurances from the international ratings agency Fitch and President John Dramani Mahama, who last week indicated that Ghana's economy remains resilient enough to withstand shocks from rising crude prices. Komala Kluche is our presidential affairs correspondent. He's joined us from the office of the President. Let's find out if the meeting is currently underway and what is likely to be the outcome. What is he gleaning? Komala, Good evening. Thank you for joining us on 3FM. Has the meeting commenced? What are you picking up?
Meeting commenced at exactly 3 p.m. and is currently ongoing. I mean, our sources within unconfirmed though is giving the indication that the meeting is yet to conclude, but shortly after that, the government will be releasing a statement, and the Minister for Government Communication likely to speak to it. There is likely to be a reprieve for Ghanaians because of the exigency of time and also the pressures that this is likely to put on the ordinary Ghanaian. As to the form it's going to take is what we are yet to get though, but it is appearing that after the meeting, Ghanaians are going to get a reprieve following the meeting, which the president himself did indicate early on that the economy is able to withstand all the shocks and all the pressures as they've been able to come out of the doldrums, even though not fully out yet, but at least it's, with what has been done by the current administration, it would be able to withstand the shocks. And so the information we're getting from our sources within that indicates that there would be some reprieve for Ghanaians. As to what form it will take is what we have to wait for to get from official sources within.
And usually, so we know that the cabinet meeting is currently ongoing, like you have indicated. The president himself is there. How is it likely to be? What should the expectation be? Like you're indicating, is likely to be a reprieve. The form we do not know, but the body language from those that are at this meeting is looking positive, and that there's a likelihood to be that government may absorb the current increments globally, or probably spread it out in a way, but the final outcome will be given to us after the cabinet meeting, right?
The composition of the build-up is such that there are some amounts that the government can take up in terms of probably the taxes and all that. Don't forget the imposition of the 1 cedi tax itself, you know, which had an expiry. You know, all those are some of the things that the government will have to look at, because I mean, as we speak, like we said, I mean, in terms of the import cover or the amount of crude that we have in the system that can take that the government can fall on in terms of a relief. I mean, there's quite a number in terms of weeks of supply of storage that is there. But the most important thing has to do with whether the composition of the prices, what exactly it is that government will do in terms of probably a suspension of maybe parts of the levy and all that. There's been a series of arguments regarding it. But as we speak, that meeting would look at all the possibilities. First of what it is that the government will do to cushion Ghanaians and then also lessen the burden in terms of the pricing. But from what it is our sources within are telling us, that reprieve will come. The form is what we are not yet being told. But after that meeting, there will be an official communication with respect to it. But as we speak, the meeting has not concluded. They are still in it. The Minister for Finance is in there. The Minister for Energy is also in there. These are two key individuals who are right in there, and will have to look at it. The Minister for Finance will also have to be looking at his books, while the Minister of Energy will also have to be looking at what the modalities are. All of these they will have to look at, and then would be able to come out with what would be commensurate with what government itself will have to absorb, which will turn a reprieve for Ghanaians. But like I did say, it's most likely, and from our sources within, unconfirmed though, tells us that yes, it's most likely that shortly after that meeting, when the communication is given, it will be to the benefit of Ghanaians as we speak.
Komla, thank you for that update from the Office of the President. Komla Kluche is our Presidential Affairs correspondent, updating us on the cabinet meeting, which is currently ongoing as government thinks through how they can support Ghanaians, especially with the background of what's happening in the Middle East and its impact on crude prices. We all are waiting to see what the outcome of that meeting will be. But let's speak to the Chief Executive Officer of DVLA Finance, Mr. Joe Jackson. Mr. Jackson, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Good evening, and hello to your listeners and to my colleagues from DVLA Finance.
Right. What are your personal expectations or your permutations are expected out of the meeting? We know that government promised that they were going to do something about the potential increase in fuel prices, but what is your reading of what's going on and what we should be expecting?
Okay, now there's been a lot of noise rising to a crescendo and led by the opposition or minority group in Parliament that seems to say we should take up the taxes to provide some relief. Now, that seems to be the most obvious thing to do, simply because prices have gone high. There'll be pressure on the regular Ghanaian, so let's take up the taxes. But the challenge I have with that is, first of all, we have not reached crisis level yet. The fuel price has gone up, but in times past, it's been higher than it is now. In our very recent future. And so we shouldn't overreact to this perceived impending fuel shock. Providing across the board subsidies, either by taking taxes off or subsidizing the price of fuel, may not really be the right thing to do. Every single cent that is in that taxes has been allocated to a particular reason. We have the issue to do with our energy sector debt. And because of that, the 1 cedi was added, what we call the D-levy. Now, it's easy to say, take that off. But if the energy sector debt starts to build up again, who pays the price in the long term? The reason why we have all enjoyed this period of stability in inflation, stability in the cedi dollar value, stability in prices, etc., is simply because the government has been disciplined about its expenses and has reined in expenses to stay within its revenue. If you cut revenue, what's going to happen? Does it mean that we are not going to ask this government to deliver on some of the promises that have been made? And removing taxes is a regressive thing to do. A blanket reduction in the subsidy will actually benefit the rich more than the poor, because their consumption of fuel is higher. I would say, under the circumstances, let's be extremely cautious about taking off any taxes. Rather, for those who are most vulnerable, let's put a set of reliefs in place for them. The biggest challenge we have is food prices, because the cost of logistics, the cost of transport is up to 40% of anything we eat, be it locally produced or from outside. If it's locally produced, it's the cost of farm gate to the market. If it's foreign, it's the cost of the increasing cost of a container and shipment and insurance costs. In which way it will hit us hard. Let's have a logistics task force that will try to overcome the challenges of the farm gate to market issues we have, to make sure that whatever we are producing in this country gets to the market as cheaply as possible. Those are the kind of interventions that I would pray would come, not a blanket interference in the market signaling. You see, when you remove the cost, when you reduce the cost of fuel from what the world prices, it distorts things because we don't take the right decisions based on the right and full cost of products. It distorts things. It makes things cheaper than they should be, and ultimately it will come back and haunt us. There is some pain that we all have to bear. Let us take it. It's a global pain. You go to other jurisdictions, they are rationing fuel already. You go to other jurisdictions, teachers, students, civil servants are being asked to stay home and off the roads and transport facilities for a number of days a week.
Right.
As we stand, we are blessed. Nothing like that has happened yet. But this blessing is based on discipline. The discipline in the way we spend the money. Let's keep that discipline. We've got renewed support of the investor committee in investing in Ghana. Look at the bonds the successful 7-year bond that was issued. Let's not destroy that. Let's not destroy any of the gains we've had by overreacting to this issue.
It's interesting the way you put it, that we should not overreact. And
yes.
So was it that you thought the president probably spoke a bit too early with his promise of the fact that they were going to do all they can to ensure that Ghanaians do not feel the pressure of what was happening globally? Because as of today,
the president was responding to what I said, the crescendo of voices asking him to react. He's our president. He must react. And he must react when the voices are speaking.
Right.
Which is right. But the voice of the people is not always the voice of God. And he must listen to reasoned argument from all sources, the Ministry of Finance, the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Bank of Ghana, the rest of the cabinet business, and then balance our medium to long-term health of this country with an immediate relief that may be expensive.
Okay.
Let's not confuse short-term relief to what we need. Please.
Thank you for the perspective you've shared on this. You know, it's interesting how the thought of many Ghanaians will be immediately we start having any such signals of a possible price increase, a fuel price increase. They're asking for subsidies and reductions, and government should intervene. So it's interesting you're asking that government should hasten slowly or be more cautious so that it's not just cutting revenue because of the public call. We need to weigh all the options available before a final decision is made. Mr. Jackson, thank you for your time.
Thank you too.
And he is the chief executive of DLX Finance and one of the critical voices on issues of the economy that we hear and follow. Especially if you are a newsy person, you know that here at Media General on all our platforms, 3FM and TV3, Unia, etc., we try to get the best voices on specific sectors to help us have a better understanding of things happening around us and how they could affect us positively or negatively. This is 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition. We are turning our attention to some other stories this evening having to do with the fact that, well, yesterday a committee set up to look at the safety of a vehicle that many of you may have seen by now is the Toyota Voxy. The committee recommended, amongst other things, that it should not be used for public transport, but the institution that registers these vehicles, that's the DVLA, says that there is absolutely nothing wrong with registering the vehicles either for private or commercial reasons. Let's delve into the story now. And the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority says Voxy vehicles currently in use were duly registered after passing the required mechanical tests. This comes in response to concerns raised by the National Road Safety Authority, whose technical working group flagged issues including the unlawful conversion of some vehicles from right-hand drive to left-hand drive. However, the DVLA's Public Relations Officer, Stephen Atu, maintains that the Voxy models in question met all mechanical requirements prior to registration. He also emphasized that registering a vehicle for commercial use does not automatically permit it to operate over long distances or nationwide routes. Let's listen to this argument being put forward.
DVLA registers Voxy just as any vehicle. We have the private vehicle testing stations that we call PVTS. They are private. We license them to operate. We have a supervisory role over them. So such a vehicle will have to go to them for them to test it and then attach a test report that passes the vehicle for it to be registered by DVLA. They will go ahead for the registration. So what it is that if the testing process confirms that at the time of testing there's no problem with the vehicle, DVLA cannot refuse the registration. But for DVLA, a vehicle would be registered at the authority once it meets the condition for registration. So if a vehicle comes to us and it's a left-hand vehicle, obviously you cannot refuse the registration. If a person is even allowed to bring in a vehicle that is right-hand to convert into a left-hand, what are the standards that are used to measure for that conversion? So that if there are standards, then you can measure against those standards. In the absence of it, anybody does anything, then it becomes a public safety concern, and then we react to it. But if, as a country, we want to act proactively, then we need to define all of these standards so that in the first place, even if it's not allowed to be brought in, it doesn't come at all. Registering a vehicle for commercial purpose does not mean that you can run it across the country. That's one point we need to understand. We have taxis in Accra here. They all bear yellow license plates. The registration for commercial allows you to charge a commercial fare to pick passenger and take payment or reward for it. That is what it means. So that distinctions need to be put in place so that giving you a yellow license plate is not a license that you can use it for commercial purposes on a long distance journey. If you are operating unlawfully, it's different from the vehicle itself being lawful or unlawful. Like I raised the point, if the national decision is that they shouldn't come in, then entering here already on that account is unlawful. We take it from that point of view. If it is the conversion that is not allowed without any supervision, with a standardized, maybe vehicle conversion center developed for the purpose, and somebody does it and that becomes unlawful, then we can look at, so no, for registration cannot be unlawful. I told you that for us, once the measurement and the testing certifies that the mechanical requirement you need to be on the road has been met, you are good. And if the nation decides that that is where we are going, it means that you can't even present that vehicle before DVLA. So we must take sentiments off. Individuals have invested their money into bringing in these vehicles, but they should understand the fact that using a vehicle commercial does not necessarily mean that it only becomes commercial if you drive on a long distance. People drive taxis in Ghana, Accra, in Kumasi, Takoradi, who they drive within town. And driving a long distance comes with it a higher risk of fatigue and accident as against driving intra-city. And so you may want to recoup your money at a certain speed, but if the system says we won't allow, because lives are at stake and we must protect those lives rather than the revenue you think you are making, that should be it. If it's a policy decision, it comes from the ministry. And whatever is decided through that policy conversation, which will be a national conversation that will be had, if that directive is given by the ministry on how to classify and regard these class of vehicles, DVLA will abide.
And that's the voice of Stephen Atu, who is the public relations officer of the DVLA. And what do you make of the assertions where they seem to have a different position regarding the use of the Voxy vehicles for public transport? He has shared his thoughts. Yours, we would also be happy to hear it. So do share it with us in the comment section. Away from that, the Office of the Special Prosecutor can now formally serve former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta with criminal summons, albeit in the U.S., in the corruption-related charges filed against him in Ghanaian courts. That was after Ken Ofori-Atta was released from ICE detention pending hearing on his deportation. Enyonam Haliga has details over the action which could prove a novelty.
Ken Ofori-Atta's release from ICE detention after 90 days has got many talking. Ghana's former finance minister, despite being on bail, is not a free man. While he pushes to regularize his stay in the United States, authorities are seeking to deport him for overstaying his visa. With the decision pending until April 27, officials of the Special Prosecutor and the Attorney General have the opportunity to serve him with criminal summons over his pending case in Ghanaian courts.
Thankfully, today, in consonance with due process and the rule of law, Ken Ofori-Atta has been released and is rejoined with the service. The proceedings in the ICE court stand separate and distinct from the extradition request. The ICE matter is a purely administrative immigration matter. He had applied for an adjustment of his immigration status. So ICE proceedings or hearings have nothing in common with the extradition request. The extradition request, so far as I can understand, thus far, is supposed to be pending.
Ghana formally filed extradition processes with their U.S. counterpart seeking the return of Ken Ofori-Atta in December 2025. Interestingly, however, the extradition request was not availed to the judge in the deportation case by the U.S. attorney, prompting concerns about the viability of the request.
That he's been released is a bad sign because not at a point we're told that the extradition proceedings have begun. So, if extradition proceedings have begun and the person is released, oh, that's a bad sign, extremely bad sign, because it's not easy to get bail when a person is facing extradition proceedings.
With the concerns yet to be cleared, the fixed date of focus is April 27, 2026. The date will determine if Ken Ofori-Atta will be deported.
I don't know whose prayers God is going to listen to, because in court and from experience, issues about this, nobody can tell.
Right.
Until the last minute when the judge will decide. So if Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta is not lucky, and on the 27th, the American government says, yes, you are in breach of our laws, we are not going to give you a second chance. You must be deported. Then immediately, you have to be brought back. And that will indirectly favor the government of Ghana, because they also need, all they need is for him to be present in this country.
The onus now lies with the Office of the Special Prosecutor to navigate international legal channels, highlighting the challenges of serving criminal summons across borders and ensuring cooperation under the treaty law. For now, the former Finance Minister Kenneth Ofori-Atta remains free in the United States, but with his passport seized and legal battles ongoing, the race to bring him to justice is far from over.
And that's a report put together by Enyonam Haliga, giving us better or at least detailed understanding of the next few steps expected by the Attorney General in the extradition process for Ken Ofori-Atta to be brought into the jurisdiction to stand trial, because the OSP has leveled a number of charges against him But because he was in the US and had been arrested by ICE agents for overstaying his visa, it looked as though the charges leveled against him had to be stayed for some time. But now that he's been released, we'll see what the coming days hold immediately. The workers say the final report of the staff migration exercise, which commenced in December 2024, was submitted to the Ministry of Finance in January 2026, but no action has been taken yet. In a statement, the staff further accused the Finance Ministry of not taking any definitive action to approve and transmit same to the Controller and Accountant General's Department. Let's speak now to Francis Bangfu Deme, who is the Divisional Chairman of the Public Sector Workers Union of the TUC. A very good evening to you, sir. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. And I say good evening to all our cherished listeners as well.
Right. How long has this staff migration been pending?
Okay, so it's important I put things into proper perspective for listeners to be able to appreciate where we are coming from. Dated back in November 2024, about 80% of the staff population were due for promotion. But by then, we had our new scheme of service, which was just approved in July same year 2024. And what it therefore means is that staff needed to have been migrated onto the new scheme of service to reflect our organizational structure and staff progression. So the staff promotion, which was supposed to take place in November, was kept pending because Public Service Commission then had to merge the two services together. We began the migration exercise in December 2024 and traveled through the whole of 2025 until in December 2025 when the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission hinted us that they will have to validate the reports that were done by the Public Service Commission all over again. And that exercise began in December 2025. I must give applause to the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission because they demonstrated enough commitment, given the gravity of the situation on the ground. Under 1 month, they were able to complete the migration exercise, written their reports, and same were transmitted to the Ministry of Finance for onward processes. But we therefore became so dismayed when the reports were sent to the Ministry of Finance in January. Up to today that we speak, April, the reports remained at the Ministry of Finance. This has become so frustrating to the staff of NIA, who has consistently given out their best, demonstrated enough commitment to giving out increasing productivity and rendering their service to the state. And this is where we have got into. We think that the management, we've worked consistently with them, together with the mother union, and we can confirm that they have demonstrated enough commitment. But the commitment of the management is not being complemented by the efforts of Ministry of Finance, because they have done consistent follow-up at the Ministry of Finance. The union, we have also done same almost every week. We are always there to check and confirm that things are moving. But we realize that there was no serious effort or action taken on our documents ever since they got to the Ministry of Finance. And this for us, we think it is utterly unacceptable and we cannot take it. The level of agitations on the ground is unbearable as it stands now. And that is why we seem to have sounded that kind of alarm to management to let the Minister of Finance know that no matter what bureaucratic processes are, those ones cannot be sacrificed. We cannot sacrifice the staff progression, staff welfare as against bureaucracies because somebody has to sit somewhere and then take an action on a document or on a correspondences for it to be transmitted. It is long overdue and we can't take it any further.
So you say that the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission at least showed some good faith in the process, but the Finance Ministry, since receiving their report in 2026, has not taken the expected steps. But
exactly,
what exactly is this migration? Is it just because that, for instance, and I'm trying to understand what the concerns being raised here are, that people are due for promotion, these promotions have not happened, there are supposed to be remuneration increment. That has also not happened. That is the crust of the submission you are making, right?
Certainly. So apparently what the migration exercise seeks to do, once you have a new scheme of service, they will therefore have to build a new salary structure that corresponds with the structure of the scheme of service, and then technically onboard all the staff onto this new salary structure, which is now consistent with the scheme of service. And that is exactly what this exercise is supposed to do. Now, because promotions have also been halted for far too long, it has been embedded in this exercise altogether. And what it also means is that while they are doing the migration, they would consider if, as at November 2024, one was supposed to have been promoted, given your entry point, your qualification, you were supposed to be promoted to a given grade point. The migration report would technically place you at that level. And